Alrighty then. Hello. I see you got a couple people here. How's everybody doing? This is the first time I've done one of these in a hot, well, I guess not the first, but first time in a long minute. Let's take a look. Alright. It says it should be going. I always hate it when people do this, but it kind of makes sense. Let's see. Hopefully this should be quick and then we can get started. Oh hey, it looks like it's going. I can't see the chat though, so I will need a hot second. Just so I can see what you're all saying. I guess it doesn't matter, really. I mean, yes, no? I wouldn't want to ignore you people who were kind enough to tune in. That would be very rude. All right, howdy, sick. Okay, it should be here. Thank you all for showing up. Let's turn this music down. And then, it's still coming through my head. All right, so, hopefully we don't disappoint. So tonight we are going to be going through a wonderful little work, Codex Olympia Majoris by Basilius, a noble plebeian. Excellent dude who's putting a lot of work into this. I've been meaning to get to this for years now, I think, maybe. I don't know. It came out in 2021, I think. But hopefully we can go through this and see what you think. Brazilian, hell yeah. We're mainly here from a Brazilian Discord server. Sweet. Let's check it out. And let's not disappoint. Here is the unofficial Codex Olympia Majoris. Man, we have Brazil. It must be super late. Oh, why would it be late? It's West Coast. It does better. The history of the unification of Olympia and its solar system. All right, we see Chapter 1, Before the Iron. There's a saying born from the dawn of history that rose with the first palace of the first city where the first king ruled of the primordial civilization. This very phrase had endured the test of time. Like the mountains themselves in those ancient immortal words, it was said, "Those who live up high can only look down upon us." The life in old Olympia circled around that very truth, most times literally, as the geographic accidents in the great mountain ranges of Olympia dried up valleys and blocked the rain to reach the lowlands, with the only other source of water to quench the thirst of the lowlanders being the river, all but a few controlled by dams and dikes built by those who had lived in the fortress city-states, sculpted strongholds that sit in the larger passageways and plateaus of the mountain ranges. Woo! That was a very long sentence, but very, very pretty. All the way through. Oh my God, it's 35 a.m. in Brazil. That's early. I guess late. So we're looking. So it seems we're getting to the very ancient mythological history of Olympia with this. Now, can we take a quick look here and appreciate how beautiful this codex is? And it just struck me as I was saying his name, Basilius. So, I imagine is the author Brazilian as well? That'd be really interesting. It makes sense, I guess. But yeah, no, this looks awesome. I first encountered it when I went to Space Battles. I was kind of scrolling through it. It's one of the few interesting forums still around. And I stumbled upon it and I saw it and I was just so hyped. No, wait, that's a lie. I've seen it. I go to Space Battles a bit, but I think I saw it when I was looking for images for a video. And then I think it was the elephant video. We'll see the elephant picture here. I clicked to it and linked to Space Battles. And it was, and I was like, oh, that's neat, Space Battles. And I saw this whole codex and I was blown away. Anyway, it's pretty rad. So, sick. The man himself is in the chat. Right on. So yeah, just taking a quick look at this for posterity. Look at all of the effort. This beautiful bookwork here. See Olympia here, the image of that. And then everything else. This looks like a proper codex. even as a fan work, getting this printed out would be pretty rad, and a nice like leatherback book. I think it'd be nice. Anyway, let's continue. We'll go back. So, from the very beginning, we're going back into the primordial mythology of this, and then let's continue on. Every day, the peasants would fear that the hard soil wouldn't be enough to provide him and his masters above. Every day, farmers and hunters would fear the often closing of dikes and blockades of rivers. Every day, they would fear that their masters would demand of them to make the water flow once more. This fear would foster and grow into paranoia. Men would go to the fields to work together, fearing that the shortage would come at a moment's notice. And when the enforcers and clerks came to ask who the blame would fall for the enclosure of the waterways, the hunt for the scapegoats would start. Lords of lands. Excuse me. I think I'm gonna just interject periods here. Lords of lands blamed their subordinates, foremen blamed the serfs, and the lowest workers pointed fingers at each other. Most, if not all, the villagers could endure the artificial shortage of water. If the reserves of the water would to be shared equally, but the desperate and malicious seek to put a blame of all in a few. Those chosen to be sacrificed in the altar of greed and desperation died innocent, a slow death of thirst, while the living kept vigil to find new ones to blame, so their part of water can be shared by the thirsting whistleblowers. I like it. I can see how I'm enjoying so far. I know it's 2 paragraphs in, but I can kind of see laying the groundwork for, I guess, justifications for why the Olympians are so, tight-fisted and tight-assed. Those competent, crafty, or just lucky enough to escape the deeps of the valley would find their way up to the fortress city-states made of stone, carved from the mountainside, standing proud hundreds of meters up into the sky. Their walls and battlements stood in the protection of the densely packed urban centers and expensive palaces of the highlands, masses of gasping farmers and breathless foreigners, not used to those altitudes, made long lines to be first to enter as the stone gates opened in the morning. Some stay with the promise of work, becoming indentured serfs in the crafting shops, concubines or frontliners for the army, where they will miss the days of their lives on the shadows of the mountains. I love the imagery that you have interjected here, and it's excellent. From those born of the city was the privileges of participating in the public assemblies and ruling consuls. The elected ones would now have a say on the day-to-day of the cities, mostly in the ceremonial way than actual power. These vestiges of a republic functioned more as a stepping stone for those that tried to run for an administrative and public offices within the households of the nobles themselves than actual political representation. This small semblance of power, and possibly of ascending even higher on the social ladder, made the assemblies a place of fierce political intrigue, and podium for the most well-spoken sophists of their time, with the most prominent of those being chosen by the nobility, turned into members of the noble houses, protected personas, or anything that the blue bloods would turn then in order to further their own ends. Fair enough. It's kind of makes sense to me. However, the importance of these meritocrats recruited from the assemblies couldn't be understated, as those of the middle classes were the ones that made the city function, and many were examples of nobles that lost the favor with the bureaucratic families and lords of the manufacturi districts just to discover how sharp their quills could be. All right, I need a second for some water, but going through. So they're getting just a semblance of. I gotta digest this a little bit before we continue. There's a lot to go through. So from those formed from the city was so you're getting a little bit of people who are born in there and kind of giving the plebs some power to make them, to just little crumbs to make them placated, and then those who are actually competent are rising up and slowly sort of itching their way. Yeah, that makes sense. It seems a very logical way to go for that. Before we continue, just kind of I know I didn't set the stage. I'm not quite as adept at streaming as some, but hopefully everybody else's night is going all right. Mine is going pretty good. It's been a long couple of weeks, but excuse me, that may have popped a little. I've got a small little drink with this. Hopefully everybody else is having a nice time as well this late into the evening. But yeah, no, this is good. As I don't know if anybody's been playing Space Marines yet on the pre-order. I haven't yet, but 2 anyway. But it's looking pretty sick. I was trying to burn through 1 as fast as I could. I've played it before, but man alive, I don't think I got to the very end of it. Anyway, will the stream be saved? Absolutely. You don't have to stay up for it. This is more me going through, and if anybody wants to say anything, you're more than welcome. But yeah, no, you can watch it again later and skip through the ramblings. You have a good night if y'all have to leave. But we'll continue on and go for the rest of at least for most of this. This might be a 2-parter because there's at least another 46 pages. So it's going to be a little bit. I'll try to be here for a couple hours and burn through a couple chapters and go through it. Anyway, yeah, so I wonder. So I haven't seen this entirety. I've only seen the Codex Olympia Majoris enough to save all the images for the stream. I've kind of wanted to keep myself fresh since I've put it off for so long and really enjoy it in one go as much as I could. But I think I can kind of feel how this is going, which I love. Anyway, let's get back to it. Still higher than the citizens were the tyrants and their noble counterparts. For those of our Imperium may know, the political web of intrigues, backstabbing politics, Byzantine schemes, and honors titles we see in the Olympian courts are akin to those found in the spires of hive worlds, but with one vital difference. Hive worlds tend to have hundreds of millions of nobles, tens of thousands of houses and traditions older than the Imperium itself. While in all of Olympia, one would be hard-pressed to find 100,000 highborn in all of the planet. This level of complexity and intrigue showed, if anything, the genius of the Olympian politicians and the level of planning they were capable of, even if turned almost only to benefit themselves than anything else, is a talent that I'm still to see rivaled by any, save those in the throne world. All right. So I've seen some people talk about codexes and there being in universe. This is clearly a remembrancer of some kind going through the histories of Olympia. I dig it. All right. Let's see. And this way of paranoia and mutual exploration, this society worked, building up social tensions and frustrations with every scheme and every plot that both the upper and especially the lower strata tried and failed. And for their failures, they paid a heavy and unforgiving price. Be by enslavement, social isolation, loss of jobs, and even the right to have property. So slavery, I imagine. But there is only so much that one could take before the taken start to fight back. And there were tales of tyrants that could see themselves flung out of their castles by the angry masses, guided by cunning nobles desperate for change, and but others would find the solution to solve the buildup of societal wrath, and as we saw again and again in history of our galaxy, the solution to vent this hate was, as always, war. Oh, the universal, it is in-universe, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Priscillius. In-universe character talking about Olympia. Excellent. Old Olympian war was mostly ritualized by their nature. Mostly armies didn't march to storm and occupy an enemy city, but to bloody themselves and control the population of the ever-expanding discontent lowlands. Wars were a bloody business. Armies grind on each other on the narrow passageways and mountainsides, mostly often after exhausting their men in the battlefields and found oneself on the losing side of the battle. A city would surrender, offering its vassalage to the winner for an expected 12 years demanded by tradition. So okay, let's finish this. In other cases, when surrender wasn't offered, the losing city would be put to siege. If their gates were breached or their walls came down, the conquering soldiers would gather inside the city, and the commander of the victorious army would have the right to proclaim carnival. For those unaware of what carnival is, what carnival of old is, an example would fit more than an explanation. The following is a description of carnival that occurred in Cardis after the first major victory of the Primarch. Okay, sick. I do love this. I love the in-universe aspect, the role of it all. It just feels very nice. I am curious, so I'm excited to read this next part about Carnival. But I am curious about. I want to reread this one section. Old Olympia war was ritualized by their nature. Mostly armies didn't march to storm and occupy an enemy city, but to bloody themselves and control the population of ever-expanding discontent lowlands. Okay, so people go to war for. it's very interesting. I think about. I don't know. I've dipped my toes in the most sort of armchair about why people go to war, and my understanding is that it's people want things from someone else or want to help and control their population, and I guess this would make sense. You're trying to grasp control of. It says it right there. They're people, but I was trying to think if. Because they're usually like limitations, right? So if the ruling party has everything they need, and they can, the only thing they have to worry is about the discontent of the sort of layperson. I suppose that would make sense. Kind of bloody them up, make them sort of have fervor and I guess what's the word? Patriotism for their own city states. I think I have a couple books about ancient Greece that I really need to get to, that I've put aside, that I would love to see the sort of mindset. I don't know, Brazilius, have you read a bunch of ancient Greece? Because I really don't know how the sort of inter-city-state war. Oh, of course, yeah, redirect the hatred to the outsider, for sure. But I am wondering about sort of how because what happens with Perturabo, right? He gets control, he sort of unifies it. If you have somebody strong enough to do it and say, screw it. I guess he was the son of... it doesn't matter. Let's continue. Okay, so let's get this example of Old Carnival. Oh, sick. History major. Very nice in university. God, it was so close. I went a different way, but I wish I could have went history or philosophy. Love it. So let's get to the description of... let's say again, the following is a description of the carnival that occurred in Cardis after the first major victory of the Primarch. And I was there in the plaza of the marble palace of Cardis, when the thunderous voice of him, the Lord of Iron, declared carnival for all except the old city of Cardis. The bloody and tired men of Locos screamed and chanted in exactly at the words, and when the Primarch left their sight, the gates of hell were flung open. The breaching training of the shock troops were used to breach houses and throw out their inhabitants. I saw men being burned by coil guns of the Store Bizarre for the price of 3 pieces of silver. Soldiers carrying gold and women alike out of houses to despoil them in the open. Nobles of Thorakites were laughing as they opened fire in the fleeing civilians. betting the possessions of a captured youth to the one that killed the most. Knives swung indiscriminately. Men used the still bloody skin of the fallen as clothes in the blood-fueled madness of sadistic vigor. For 6 hours there were no laws of Lord or God that ruled over the city, and that day I remembered why the black judges prey on men. Rusted Life of a Soldier of Iron, D'Antioch, Carmos. Pretty nice. I very much dig it. It's just oof. So Carnival effectively just the purge and everything's fair game on those citizens. What a nightmare. A teacher. Oh, best of luck to you, my man. That is a noble and less than appreciated profession. But it's wonderful life. No, okay. I don't know how good of a life it is, but I have thoughts. Free loot and free game, absolutely. Oh, that's nightmarish. Okay. After the 6 hours of Carnival, the victorious armies would march out of the defeated's gate, carrying what they could back home. The exhausted armies would arrive back to their metropolis. The loot sorted and divided. The dead would be counted. Some minor officers would be given titles of nobility, importance, and life would go back to the way it was. Little changed for the everyman of the mountains. So, I love... Oh, God. I wonder how that tradition would continue on, sort of, if we're gonna be like, let's logically follow it through, sort of declaring an act of, well, I guess that's, I don't know, I need to go read actual more sources on sieges and sort of raiding, right? Because I imagine that might just be how sort of raiding was done, but it's, oh boy, it comes from pure ignorance, because I'm just trying to think about sort of that sort of tradition and the fear of like what would happen to a people who was like, if we lose this fight, would they declare Carnival on us for shits and giggles? And then the sort of the mindset that puts into a person, and how unstable it would make a society in the long term, knowing that they do that and that could potentially be done to somebody else. Like, that's got to have serious trauma onto people, like the ones who are continuing on. And not to belabor it too much, because this is 40K, and I do love the what's the word, the older version, just Mountains of Skulls, and just everything is spiky and edgy beyond reason. So maybe it's looking too deep into the cracks, but I do wonder how populations can recover, especially if it's not that huge, right? How many people would survive? Like, how much of 6 hours of mindless slaughter and looting would leave people to rebuild over time? How often are wars happening? It's similar to traditions of the Bantu people in South Africa. Good Lord. Okay, I gotta look that up later. That's sick and oof. All right. Africa sounds lovely. Dodecatheon, lords of the mountains. In the southern tropics of Olympia stood the second largest plateau in the planet, the that's a good one. Uriac Highlands, a young one-plain field that stretched over hundreds of kilometers of snow and ice, constantly melting and feeding the 4 major rivers of the Iraqian basin with the crystalline liquid of life, traveling for underground caves until surfacing down below to bless 12 cities with the most abundance in water. The blessed by this young gift quickly build their cages and coffins to guard those bones. Dikes and dams were made to tame the access of water of dozens of lesser city-states and millions of landers. Okay, neat. The one is to... Yeah, no, for sure. I saw that. The one oh okay. I was wondering. I see the footnote. I would not have connected that to the young. The that checks out. Mostly of the geological structures from the surface of Olympia are relatively young. The surface is millions of years old, but the stress grows and the size of geological layers indicate that most of the mountains below 10-kilometer heights are actually around 5,000 to 6,000 years old. Okay, neat. So I am curious, though. This obviously seems to put a lot of effort. And while you're here, were you planning? Did you use this for anything? Sort of it was just a personal art piece for fun, for love of the fandom, or did you actually get to like make use out of it for your university work? I'd be very interested to know. Anyway, moving on. This blessing from the mountain gave those 12 cities status, prestige, and power that extended over all of, oh, goodness gracious, Diocelion. Oh, that sounds sweet. I pronounce that French, but we're moving on. The endo name given to the cultural group of the now traditional Olympian culture today. The name is still used as a synonym of the Empire of Iron. Okay. Let's see. Cardis, Corian, Gimente, Chakaspade, Moros, Ekdormoi, Peltas, Siluraio, Sailoi. Oh, this is going to be fun. Toxotai, Sarissa, and, of course, Locos, composed of the Dodecathon, a league of 12 city-states bathed directly those Arican rivers. When those cities went to war, they drowned entirety of the Dodecathon in blood, with armies growing into the hundreds of thousands and the possession of the few treasures of technology that survived the old night, even if they were as much as a las pistol. For those who only knew of the long spear and the round shield, those artifacts were akin to weapons wielded by the gods themselves. I mean, seriously, putting more than a 7.62 with a laser blast that can be, have the ammunition regenerated by a campfire. Come on, that's excellent. Like, wow, that's just what I wouldn't give for one of those. Every 12 years, I mean, the between single shot to automatic fire. Come on now. Every 12 years, the Council of Orarch would be summoned, and the 12 tyrants of the Dodecathon would open up the Telephenian gate. Oh, God bless you. That was an excellent, that just felt good to say. Telephenian? Ooh. Telephenian Games, where all the citizens of all across the, this looks awful now, Diocelion? Oh, I should be more Greek. Had the chance became champions. Had the chance to become champions. For all those that managed to become one of the 5 champions by passing all the trials would gain the boon of the white crown for an entire year. The extent of such a prize can be seen within the following citations. Oh, well, I dig it. I'm enjoying your short works of internal fiction with this. I love it. Was the fandom? Hell yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I'm a big fan of it. And I'm trying to make a follow-up to the Siege of Olympia. Oh, no, you deleted it. I missed it. There was a message, but it's gone now. Either way, fair enough. Let's keep boogieing. I will say, there's probably a name. I'm making my own personal Four Loko here with a good old boomer monster and a nice little, light Pilsner. Let's keep boogieing. There wasn't a bottle of... Okay, let's see. There wasn't a bottle of wine denied to him. Apocoreus. There's a better way. And there was no food, sacred or expensive, he didn't receive freely. Tyrants send concubines and even their daughters to warm his bed. Some tyrantes themselves willing to sleep with him and claim that her sons had him as a father. He bathed 5 times a day and washed his horse with the sacred waters from the Arican highlands itself. Many would be killed for such a front to the gods, but was to him nothing of chastising or persecution, as he was a champion of the gods. And for him, what was forbidden in his 10th month of championship, Epicurus would depart for the hollow mountain of the far south, in the Macedian lands, to find the palace of he who banished the great smith Dolomygos and his metallic spawns of the Tarteian, Tarteian abyss in the last of days of Pharaoh monarchy. Good, the lost houses of Prometheus himself, the last Erytnial champion of the gods, and to this day Epicurus is still to return. Almasi Therodos. Very nice. Okay, so we'll read the footer in a second, but just okay. The 12 tyrants would open. So there's games. Effectively, I imagined, were these blood games again? Managed to become one of the 5 champions, passing all the trial. So hold on. These are some hell of an odds, right? So I'm gonna I don't think it says here that any of them are blood games, but I can only imagine. So I'm terrible at math. Let's just put it. But there's 12 people, right? So a little less than almost half. So if 12 champions are gone and 5 win, 5 get like... I mean, I have to imagine that these are still like the cream of the crop from the entire world of Olympia. So like, I get them being like able to get high, but 5 seems a lot. Yeah, no, for sure. It's like the Olympian Games. There's... Oh, wait, hold on. Is there no blood games? Is it just, like, games? Is there, like... Say you're wrestling. I imagine they're wrestling. Sure, somebody might break an arm or something. But, like... I mean, good lord. I imagine the highly contested... what's the word? Primaries in these, sort of. In each Olympian state, people are chomping at the bit to win. Because, I mean, those are fantastic odds. 5 out of 12. Anyway. Those are more like games. But people can die. Fair enough. But, man, even better. Are you kidding me? Train your whole life to win this. I wonder, so do they all go? Or did he just want to go? And also, just so we're clear, I'm a huge fan of the little bit of history in that with the Pharaoh monarchy. Excellent. Like the Titan... I thought it was not... Is Titan Marquis? Titan Mancy? Demi... Whatever, the whole... the war between the gods and the Titans. And so I imagine we have some... I don't know whether it's a Men of Iron or sort of weird Necron thing, just the ancient... what is it? Dark Age of technology. It says it at the bottom. Let's see. The mythological war between the smith god Dolomygos and his metallic war men against all of the Olympian gods. Excellent. Anyway, as a factual historiator, isn't mine to claim study of the mythological aspects of Olympian belief or defend them as factual truths. But the tale of Prometheus is intrinsically linked with the mythological origins of the Black Judges, and as we know, those cursed creatures indeed exist. It's possible that some truths exist buried in the tales of these heroic figures. Such power had his name had that many believed that the Black Judges never ruled the lands to slave and spoil its population, fearing to attract the ire of Prometheus. You know, I must say, I do love having pseudo-Greek names in there and then just kind of going straight for Prometheus. I imagine it's like using the All-Father for the Space Wolves in Fenris. Like, you just have a little bit just direct in there. Or having Vulcan's name be Vulcan. The Telephinian Games are still held on to this very day, with the natural secularization of the procedures to accord with the imperial truth. The competition is open for all citizens of the Empire of Iron to compete, and those that win was something to the Olympians of old could only imagine. The boon of centuries-long youth and flawless body beyond human baseline. Well, that would be neat. The rejuve treatments and whatever augmentations you can get. Yeah, that'd be pretty rad. But to be fair, how much? So you have youth, which is excellent. The rejuve treatments for anybody being able to play the games is fine. But the bodies of Olympians now, like to be able to win the games, you have to have just like peak human, right? That's the whole thing with Captain America. He's got, peak in everything somehow. Doesn't quite make sense, but like the fakest. I was guessing something similar. Fake Astartes treatment. Okay, so they're gonna turn them all into Corpheron. Do they get put into the Legion, or are they just hanging around as a boon that a Perturabo allows some resources? Hold on. How does that work? They have to be a part of the Legion if they're going to get the fake Astartes treatment. Because I was thinking, because there's no way Perturabo is going to let, like how Luther did. Yeah, for sure. But Luther, I imagine he got Gene Seed, right? Like Luther and Corpheron. I don't know. Do they get Gene Seed? No, they're just people that walked around like that. Oh God. Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's, jeez. All right. I actually never questioned that. I assumed I knew that they obviously weren't real Astartes, but I never really looked into just how different they might be. I knew they didn't get all of the organs and everything. But yeah, no, they wouldn't get the gene seed implantation because they're still just like roided up dudes. All right. Either way, let's continue. The wild... Oh, my goodness. I need more water. Astartes level, but don't have gene seed. That makes sense. The wild southerners. For as vast that was the ancient region of Deucalion on old Olympia, it didn't dominate the whole globe. Far from it. Since the war against the men of iron and the millennia-long old night, Olympia became a place too large for its inhabitants. Those that didn't mutate in the flesh, turning themselves into twisted parodies of humankind, like the Black Judges, and other creatures that dared to thread in its surface of this planet, surely drifted in ideology and culture. There are too many to speak of, from the Menitic states, home to the life crafters of Menitia and their creations, thus sailors of Ethiopia and their hydro-alchemists, statistic tribes of the Caucasians, those who lived within the image of their gods, the colorful Dahekians and their archive temples that depicted their histories with artful grace, and many others. All right. So we're saying obviously this isn't just theme park, ancient Grecian world where we have many other cultures on Olympia. Fair enough, but there are one civilization far removed from the center of old Olympia, but yet unsettlingly close. Beyond the mountains, crossing the deserts, where raiders and caravans dominate the dry landscape, where the rings of Olympia formed a bridge across the skies, closer to the South Pole of the world, is the lands of open and fertile fields. Those who lived here call themselves Macedians. Macedians. I wonder what's the... I know there's Macedonia. Macedians. It says Macedians. All right, let me check one thing. I want to... I guess at the end of the day, this other bit doesn't matter. That's... I done undid it. There it is. Here, okay, let's just continue on. Here the mountains would be a rare sight, with the open ground, fertile fields, and pastoral camps being a welcome gift to those that endured the arduous journey to here. With the lack of the masonry that the mountains provide, the villages were mostly made of wood and clay, bricks, but still one can clearly see the parallels with the palaces and temples, mansions and marketplaces. Even the town halls and parks are similar to those found in the Decilion, and yet adapted to their building blocks, those there found at hand. So I need one of those pronunciation guides for that one. Decilion. I want to pronounce it like a Frenchman, and I know that's not how you do it. Anyway, let's see here. The Mycedian fields. Oh God, just these. There's something about the pseudo Greek names, that Greek names, pseudo Greek names. It just gets me every time. I absolutely adore it. Their societies are divided, mostly in tribes. Each one consisted of a small settlement that lived on of the land they claimed to themselves, be by hunting or farming. The former was seen as more virtuous than the latter, in contradiction of what we see with the classical Olympian culture. So the line of the former was so the what was it? Hunting and farming. Hunting was more. I guess that makes sense. Settled civilization versus sort of going out and hunting for your meal, especially if it's a grassland. Those tribes united. Form a city, and the area of those cities may grow to be of thousands of square kilometers in size. Many outsiders were disappointed to discover that much of those territories considered within the city were made of farmland and even wide tundra instead of buzzing metropolis they imagine. I could see that. You have in cities. I wonder what these exotic cities of the grasslands of the wild Southerners are like, and then it's just these boony hicks in the middle of nowhere. It's all farmland again. I was tricked. For it is true. Excuse me. One moment. Above the cities, we see the federations, headed by a king elected by the will of its members of each tribe of each city. His role was more of a judge than an active ruler, as most of the decisions were taken from the individual tribes and their members about their ruling, and was his job to judge if any mayor of any city were suppressing the most valued thing in a Macedian society, his freedom. Okay, it was a little rough to make through, but effectively a hyper libertine society with a single king who says, "You stomping on this boy's freedom?" I want there must be, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I can imagine a lot of what's the word? Like fables, like or very like what is it? David asking, a lot of mythology around that society about freedom and sort of the logical conclusions of one man's freedom to impose on another man's freedom, sort of thing. That would be very ingrained in the culture if that's the case. For it is true that at the time of the arrival of the Primarch upon Olympia, the Mycedians were the least technological people that called Olympia home. But if they preserved anything from old night, was their value, the right of individual freedom, consent of the governed, and equality beneath the law. Here was the last refuge of those virtues across the entire subsector, and for those who were exiled or outcast from their societies all over Decilion, tried their best to arrive in those lands. If they wanted to live amongst the locals, those Olympians had to make short work of their silver tongue and ever-present paranoia, or be forced back to where they came from. Well, that makes sense. I would certainly prefer to be a free farmer or hunter rather than, say, let me think here. Well, it's Greek, right? We're not on McCrag. Slaves, I can't imagine, have many rights on Olympia. Actually, I don't know the state of slaves in Greece. I can't imagine it was great, but oh man, it's funny. You get to that what is it? The Dunning-Kruger thing, to where you're like, I think I know a bit, and then the more you learn, it's like, no, I'm stupid. I'm ignorant. Less stupid, just entirely ignorant. There's like so many questions. How were slaves treated in ancient Greece? I'd love to know, because at least in Roman, in ancient Rome, I knew they had rights of some kind. They weren't citizens by God, but they could pay for their freedom, if my understanding is correct. But yeah, obviously you'd want to go live in the wilderness. Maybe become a farmer, work for somebody else for a little bit, figure out how to do it, because you're probably an exiled nobleman who narrowly escaped being beheaded or enslaved yourself. Moving on. Their religion was also akin to those found within the Daculian homeland, but the structure of their church is radically different in relation to their organization, as many of the clergy of those lands can be traced to intellectually descend from ancient reformers, labeled as heretics, but still giving sacrifices and prayers to the same pantheon and telling the same mythological stories found within the fortress city-states and adding to their own. It's a very nice touch. I'm a fan. I would, let's see. Well, the next one telling, yeah, I would like to see just a little bit. If you're going to say it's radically different, what's the radical difference? Like what is at least one major tenet that is that's like a big no-no, like a schism, right? Like anyway, the Mycedians were born from the classical Olympian culture of the Delusion. Of that, there was no doubt, but they deviated in such a way and still retain that many telltale marks of Delician ideas that made them not alien, and neither opposites, but entirely Mycedian civilization. But the entire Mycedian civilization can be seen as a response to the rigid and paranoid nature of the classical Olympian, valorizing individual self-reliance instead of the constant societal manipulation, to valorize individual rights and life instead of seeing each fellow human at best as a tool, at worst as an enemy. It's one of the things I never really got about Olympia as a culture. Reading the books, like it only, I guess it really only makes sense to me in the fun, edgy 80s of it all, 90s sort of early pastiche sort of 40K, which, you know, like I previously mentioned, I'm a big fan. I think there's a couple flavors of it. I like it. The early Rogue Trader where they're Stormtrooper jackboots, and it's very we can't kill this thing. This is a gigantic monster, and he's coming to put his boot directly on our neck. And then you get to the very edgy, just constant war sort of stuff, which I mean, I know it's supposed to be, but it definitely doesn't feel like it nowadays. Yeah, but having a civilization which is entirely like, I don't trust anybody, like, that's got to crumble, right? Like, how do you have an entire civilization that works like that long term? It's like USA and Olympia. Yeah, you don't have to tell me. I get that. The sort of like living in a giant city, like where, okay, hold on. Yeah, no, but that can't last, right? Like, that doesn't seem, not to be weird about it, but having an entire, because you see people like, I don't know if you know anybody from American cities. I'm very Johnny Cash in that I've been everywhere, man. From New York to Seattle to just everywhere. And there's like always a mix of like, it's all low trust, and it's corrosive to the soul, and it's corrosive to sort of being, because you can't have anything sort of function. Maybe not. I mean, I mean, how long New York is going around? But I think it's just off of the wealth. How much wealth is Olympia making? Gustavo, I do appreciate the insight, because that is, maybe I'm being too myopic in how I'm looking at this. Anyway, let's move on. But contrary to many of my contemporaries, let's do different voice. But contrary to many of my contemporaries, I don't believe that this development was entirely natural. Far from it. This culture is indeed the artificial product of a greater, if invasive and self-righteous, intelligence. One who the hands upon of the Olympian history is often overlooked, and yet so blatant that it is literally hovering over our heads, above the skies of Olympia, the dreaded black judges. God, I knew it. So so I did pick up. Don't pretend. Let's not Basilius. Let's not pretend I didn't pick up on the passage on page 3 of ruled over that city, and that day I remembered why the black judges prey on men. I was there. I picked up on it. We're gonna go. Tell me I don't remember in lore, did they ever say who the black judges were? Or I thought it was some Xenos or mutant or something. I don't think that they're space elves, Eldar. If they're Eldari, I don't know if I'm going to be annoyed, but I'm going to be just, what is that meme? Son of a bitch! And just throw my hat down, or clipboard. Oh, you son of a bitch, you did it, you bastard. Anyway, okay. The Twisted Judgment and the Shadow Hand. Arbites Obscurus, Hasuras, Midnight Reapers, Skifriti, and hundreds of other names were given to them, all referring to who dwelled within the Rock of Judgment. Oh, okay, so I do dig this. Rock of Judgment in Deep State. I do dig the fact if there's just like a moon orbiting Olympia, an artificial moon, that is a sick addition. I just never even considered its moons. Anyway, sorry. All referring to those who dwelled within the Rock of Judgment for millennia during the days of Old Night. Their archives and registers now orbiting Olympia itself. Excusez-moi. As the orbital fortress and the main shipyard of the 4th Legion, so close to us, but the repeated denials of access of the more detailed documentation by the garrisons of the Iron Warriors within the Hollow Moon left us with little direct evidence of their activities. Access not only Olympia, but hundreds of other worlds kept at bay by their raids and supposed protections. All right. The lore black judges are human mutants. The Rock of Judgment is something from the lore. Oh, sick! I'm a big fan of most of 40K, but I think that there's a certain point of saturation. I've got a buddy who's read the entire Black Library, like every single book, like 2 or 3 times. A lot. And I like to read books a little slower and digest them. And so I read a bunch. I think I stopped the Horus Heresy. Just a small divergence. We'll get back to this. But at around, Slaves to Darkness, maybe? Somewhere in there. Once they're basically right before they get to Terra. And then I kind of just, maybe that's still further back. But I do need to finish them. It's just, I always wonder, like, as somebody who's into art and who's into, like, really clearly I like 40K, but I always wonder, like, how much time can you spend on particular sort of fandoms and different things. But I do really kind of want to finish the rest of the books. But I will say there is a lot of lore that kind of kills you. The Fall of the Black Judges, you can look that up later from the fort. Excellent. I absolutely will. Ooh, yeah, no, I didn't know there was a book that's directly about that. I do love the idea that them being mutants. I did want to bring that up. More contentious about them being Eldar, so only just because it feels easy. Not easy, but that was not the right word. It feels like, okay, I can definitely see them being it. And you see them, there's like Dark Eldar with Vulcan. Having them be Eldar itself, just like, you kind of yearn for variety. It's a gigantic world. There's a million random Xenos. You just want more variety of Xenos. And so, like, when you have the Eldar if you have just a constant barrage of just random monsters from like a 50s pulp sci-fi book, and then the Eldar come in, it makes their coming in so much more impactful. So let's keep going. I will say, I know it. I was going to sleep. Absolutely. All right, I will talk to you later, my man. Brazilius, thank you for coming. I will say, having the Eldar be just an idea. I do not the Eldar per se, but I do love the idea of having the Dark Judges go and just tinkering with people, tinkering with different human states around Olympia. Oh yeah, man, that's like 1:30 for you. Oof. Anyway, moving on. What they are for public is, and what they are for the public is simple. Mutants, parasitic things that feast on the flesh of the young to push their millennia-long delayed death a day further into the future. Draculean beasts that held in their dungeons artifacts of horrific power, twisted to their demented gods, terrors of the old night that was now crushed and whipped out from our galaxy by the iron boot of Perturabo's design. That is indeed truth, but there are further aspects to them that we overlook in this narrative, and we can start by their official cognomen, black judge. I don't know what that word means. Black judges. This is in fact an endo name given by those who dwelled within the obsidian spires of the Hollow Moon. They saw themselves as this, arbiters and keepers of the law and order across the Meratara cluster. What values they claim to protect and what sins against their elects they punished is locked away in the deepest chambers of the Rock of Judgment. But if one investigates their past deeds within the Metara cluster, the clues will start to surface. First and foremost in this volume of over 500,000 star systems that compose the Metatara cluster, we see no significant presence of any Xeno race within their borders prior to the arrival of the Great Crusade and all the archaeological sites of the Xenos origins, at least those that Priesthood of Mars made public to us. Say that those Xenos that lived there were rightfully purged from this area of the galaxy. Their demise was dated to the early days of the Age of Strife, and as we can see, the only military power capable of projecting force across the expanse of space and time was, of course, the Black Judges. For all their twisted minds and poisonous ideas, it seems that the self-evident superiority of mankind wasn't missed by those parasitic mutants. Other evidence of this was within the world of Hyperborea. In the edge of Metatara cluster, a civilized world that gave a portion of their manpower to the Black Judges without the traumatic experiences of raids and wars. And, in their stead, the Judges would protect the Earth from Xenos incursions, going so far as to helping the population to repel several Eldari raids and at least 5 major orc wogs. Okay, so I was totally off. They weren't Eldar. They helped. Oh, they're mutants. Excellent. We could see Hyporia. Nice. That's an actual word. I thought it was a joke. Very neat. Okay. So I will say, stream I think has been going for an hour. So it's about an hour now. Let's move on. I think that at least let's go over this just a little bit. Is there any other ideas with this? I mean, this is neat. I had no idea there was their own Black Judges book, but I'm really glad they fleshed that out. I would love to go through those. I will say, I think to keep these sort of shorter and sweeter, I may do more frequent streams and maybe crank out a chapter stream. I know I said 3 streams, but I'll be real. I may have over-delivered or over-promised. They always say under promise, over deliver. That's not happening today. But let's keep going. One of the signature ships of the Black Judges are the Silver Barges, capable of atmospheric entrance. Those purple-black segmented obelisks hover meters over the ground as columns of slaves thousands long marched into its bows. The exotic ionic radiation of those thrusters created very specific isotopes on the surface of the worlds unlucky enough to be victims of their attention. And this telltale sign can be studied and dated, giving us the dates of raids that our beloved Olympia suffered. There are hundreds of thousands of identified landing zones across Olympia in the span of a millennia. In average, every 50 years, a period of widespread raids would occur from the midnight sky of our world. Their ships would come segmented insectoid things of black-purple design with the sole task of stealing our blood, our children, and our lives. Ooh, gruesome. Some regions had my brain. Uno momento. Reading for a minute gets you all flustered. Some regions Some regions had beginning the target of their twisted attention more than others. The diarchy of Spemia, great name, was a good example of that. In less than 2 hours, their entire elite Spamites units were sequestered during the monthly fear campaigns, amongst the Yelots, triggering the overthrow of the tyrant of Spamia by those same Yelots and his possession so brutally opposed. Their predecessors so brutally opposed. So I'll be honest. I am trying to... So they get a diarchy of Spermia. Okay, so 2 amongst fear campaigns. Okay, I mean, yeah, no, they came in. They knocked out the tyrant. Not too bad. The raids on Elysian states during the Punic... Pentuic. Not Punic. Why would I think that? The raids of the Elysian states during the Pentuic Wars, with the black judges descending within the farmlands and the cattle fields, stealing the population and leaving mutated animals to rampage in the countryside. Soon after, mass famines across the First Pentuic Legion became common, sealing the fate of Perger Tyrant's regime and his entire alliance. Okay, I really dig the sprinkling lore around particular stories, just kind of really hinting at backstories. It's nice stuff. And the most extreme case can be seen with the life crafters of Masmurian, the ancestral kingdom that originates from the modern region of Mintia, the kingdom of gene-bred human mutants. All their conquered populations were subjected to the quote-unquote uplifting treatment. Millions died as the retrovirus twisted their flesh and brought a painful death in the name of forced evolution. For 20 years, the Masmurian Empire ruled the North Hemisphere of Olympia until the day the judges came. I do wonder, a good story always leaves you asking more questions. What was the uplifting? What did it do? Give me some hints. Let me know what were the just some side effects of what brought them. What did they become? Metropolis of whom more than 1 million souls called home were simply silenced. The walls became unguarded, their treasures unprotected, their gateways and doors slipped open. When the sun shone again upon those lands, the entire northern hemisphere was devoid of human life. There were no corpses on the grounds, nor blood stains in the hemisphere of the planet. They all simply vanished, like dry ice in the desert. So sad. That is kind of weird. It is a bit spooky. I do like the imagery of dry ice in the desert. It is. I can see it. I can see it sort of fizzling away to nothingness. Some may already identify a pattern. Besides their swiftness and efficiency, those targets had being vital to the geopolitical state of their time. What means they were actively What that means is they were actively listening and studying Olympia. I'm not entirely sure what this means, but study Olympia and its people instead of the classical view that claimed we as just another quote-unquote hunting ground for the black judges, and combining their nefarious necessities for fresh human life. don't know what I was thinking. To their more obscure goals, they were shaping Olympia indirectly, pushing the planet to a certain direction. It is easy to assume that this was some demented ideology, religiosity, or something even darker. But one need to go deeper before coming to any conclusions. I really do need to go check out that book, because I would like to know how much of this is original work by Berzelius versus how much of this is expanded upon that lore. It really wants me to go read something else anyway. We cannot see what they wanted from us besides our bodies. Ooh. But we can see what they tolerated. Once again, mapping the hot zones of raids upon our planet, it is possible to see the regions that were mostly raided and those that were almost untouched by the Black Judges. Of course, I'm talking about the Mycedians. So yeah, no, that's a point that was propping up in my brain. You can obviously extrapolate on like their culture and what they were thinking about and what they allowed to live. Oh, major sites of the Black Judges' activities. So I am curious about what that map is at the very bottom. So where did you get that, and like what is that supposed to be? I would love it if it was just the world's map upside down and I was just too blind to see it, but I don't think it is. It'd be really funny though. Anyway, while the world suffer with the heavy-handed raids and interventions of the Black Judges, the Mycedian fields didn't even have legends regarding those mutants until the last migrations to the region. And for all the orbital scanners could tell, there aren't any trace of Black Judge activity older than 500 years before the coming of the Primarch. There are no registers telling us if the Mycedian fields were akin to the classical Mycedians half a millennia ago, or if they were, quote-unquote, guided by the judges to be the way they were. So from that, I'm kind of wondering if I made a map. Oh, sick! I love it. I absolutely adore it. That is so Berzelius made the entire map. Righteous. Okay, so what was my brain saying? So there aren't any trace of Black Judge activity older than 500 years before the coming of the Primarch, huh? So all of the stories, they would say they're only half a millennia. That makes sense. It's probably in line with what the book said. Until the archives on the Rock of Judgment were open to us. Until the archives on the Rock of Judgment were open to us. Oh, so they were. Would be impossible to convince those more skeptical of my theories. But I believe that the Mycedians and the Black Judges operated in the same political system, federated like the humans of old, praising liberty and individual freedom, operating in a meritocratic society, but still with equality beneath the law. But the judges went further. They took upon themselves to preserve the quote-unquote liberties of their quote-unquote subjects, explaining why they didn't invade and conquered to rule directly, limiting themselves to punish what they saw as crimes and sins against the race of man. Idealists at first, but when the march of time came, they had to be faced with reality. Their bodies were in the end mortal. Their new generation simply could not or would not have the same will to enforce their ideas of freedom. So they sought to extend their lifespans, using the same demented secrets of old to prolong their lives into the millennia. At the price of their humanity, they became willing daemons, stalking the night skies of 1,000 worlds, cannibalizing the people they sought to protect with the excuse of the greater picture in mind, distant carrion lords of their domain, who seeded their good if naive ideas into the hearts of many across the cluster, and then they saw a single one of those seeds beginning to bloom on the frigid region of a cornerer world. Close enough. And there was no sign of change as far as we knew Olympian life would carry on for another millennia in this way, with the mortals killing each other in the shadows of the mountains, exploiting and being exploited, kept in check by the exotic societies that developed in the deserts and far lands of the globe, while the mythological lords watched their petty struggles and petty lives. But then Perturabo arises. Perturabo arrives. All right. Oh, so later, planet later, you can see the full map of Olympia. Sick. All right. Well, that brings us to Chapter 2, The Emperor's Gift, and the excellent portrait of Perturabo. I wish I could find the artist in a beautiful meander pattern. I absolutely love it. I have a carpet with that meander pattern. It's a choice. But I think with this, so far as the stream goes, I think this might be the end of it. Thank you, Brazilius, for not only creating this, but for coming. Appreciate your insight into your wonderful work. I appreciate everyone else who showed up, and anybody else who's watching this. I probably will do more live streams in the future. They're kind of fun, just for shits and giggles, and I'll try to make this a little less amateurish. But for the moment, thank you all for watching. And yeah, no, we'll see. We'll do some more stuff later. Maybe we might even do once we're finished with once we've gotten to enjoy all of the Codex Olympia, we might do a couple more CYOAs, maybe go into some other works. We'll check out a few things. There's also a chance that I might even just do a reading of a different short story I made. Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But yes, so expect another one. Expect a Rubute's summary. Credit for the arts in the portrait. At the excellent. Yes, no. Anyway, expect another summary for the Angel Apostasy soon. That's going to be coming up. The Robute. And then Dorn after that. So we'll see. Let's see if we can go really quick before the stream ends. Let's go take a quick look-see about the artists. Really quick. The top of the portrait. Oh, so it is. I didn't even see it. Let's expand that a little bit. This gentleman's excellent art. Young Perturabo by Elijah Archpriest. Sick. All right. Well, like I said before, Brazilius, thank you for coming, and everyone else, thank you for watching. It's going to be the end. See you.